As I have to go use the restroom soon, let's talk about a little bit of the Airship. If you watched the previous two videos that came out before this, you'll be well aware of how ultimately I'll be able to make this happen, at least in some part. Give me 1 second, I'm going to pause this, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm going to take my dog for a walk here while I do this. Well, use the restroom. So, alright, let's see here. Alrighty. So, the basic is it's a vacuum airship rigid structure design that is not as rigid, but then it is rigid. It's a whole dynamic. It can go up to at its largest, a massive sphere for its total volume, but it has a dynamic changing structure internally using vacuum bladders, and that's the majority of what it is that it's using for what it's worth. But it's another version of a Hall effect, the braking thing for the movements. But it's like, I wouldn't call it a Hall effect, because at that point, this is a Lemke field effect at all intents and purposes. It's a vacuum changing thermodynamic electromagnetic charge difference that takes heat away and stores it and all that, as I talked about the vacuum braking video. So it's a Lemke field, internal hard, soft structure that is dynamically changing and has multiple different vacuum areas to change its both size, shape, and buoyancy as a result, and lift characteristics. Because it's an airship, you'll never have to worry about stalling. But because of this, I can have any relatively almost wing, because it still has to be connected, at a central point. Because if it's a sphere, that means there's a central point no matter what, which you can get a kind of bi-wing-esque shape, and this is where the flying saucer type of shape that happens to produce, regardless of what wind direction is, like a Darwin stack of funnels, which is parabolic funnels, and they're shrouds, and basically take any wind direction and funnel it towards one given area using the Venturi and Bernoulli principle. This is a similar type of thing, though, in that while I have effectively one at the bottom and then another at the top, and instead of it going upwards, it just produces lift, as it happens to help curve the air at the top in such a way that it produces lift in any given direction, but it's going to look a little bit like a stacked flying saucer sort of design that's buoyant. And then it still has a really cool, neat, Stirling air, and there is actual fuel on board. It's a whole thing. I have to talk about that. But it's an airship that is dynamic and can very, very quickly travel at insanely high speeds. So the material that I used for this was pretty simplistic in its own right. It's got to have piezoelectrics everywhere, but light and heat and air pressure differences, and the fact that there's a vacuum inside of it also means that I get, like before for the other two videos, increases of electricity as it moves. Light also happens to help produce electricity for the given field. You know about solar photovoltaics. The elephant in that room is it vibrate it is really well, and then did the zoom with the electron. Just a FYI, that's literally basically how that works. It's like, well, I buzzed right, and then the field allowed for a conversion of a electron in its orbit to then produce another electron as it collapsed off towards a supportive structure that's an electrode conductive material that then makes it so it can now move towards where it is you want it to go to. That's literally all they are. That's what the diodes are. That's why they have the issues they have, because quantum tunnel effects are kind of shit to deal with sometimes. And Hall effect, electron movement stuff, and its given orbit produces a different type of spin and field depending on ultimately how many of them that are interacting and nearby, and other fields that are around for other element chemical materials. And their given setup as well. You have to think about it as a bunch of puzzle pieces to be put together correctly. And they get affected by photons very differently depending on the wavelengths that are going to fit, slot in, not slot in, resonate, not resonate, and so on and so forth for those given effects to be achieved. Which is essentially saying, so effectively everything that you think about this bullshit being complicated isn't as complicated, it just takes a really long time to describe it well to a bunch of people that don't want to go through that amount of enormous math, which just looks intimidating for most, but I never bothered to even give a shit about the math. I was like, this is all it could ever be. I was like, this is it. Like, there's a given possibility, there's these given other possibilities, which are like, I'm virtually possibly over here, but that given pressure elicited, and blah, 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 says, no, the least resistant path for me to take is this one, and so I'll go do that. And they're like, no, there's probabilities. It's a thing. Please say that there is uncertainty, because we can't see the other reasons why they're not going there. And I'm like, yes, it is complicated, as there are many things going on and moving all at once very quickly, but I don't give a fuck. I don't care. It's still that. Shut up about it. Why is it so hard for you to understand it? But, whatever. You're a deterministic guy. I can't possibly see all of these other things going on at once. I don't have information for all the variables to be accounted as best I can, and I can't calculate as much as I want to and need to do this. Says the I am chaotic guy. I'm not getting good. Instead, I complain about not being good enough. And so now the world's definition of determinism versus chaos has to be such that it is chaotic. Boo-hoo, get better, bitch. Stop being an immature little bratazoid. Jeez. Ugh. Such a weird one. But you don't know how that works! Meanwhile, I'm gonna look at Planck links of things, little flitting, there's a tiny fields, oh, there's a pressure here, there's not a pressure there, there's this given amount of vibration, blah blah blah, all the same fucking puzzle pieces. There's only so many possibilities of it fitting together, there's only so many things that will reduce its ability to fit. Oh, what do you know, it's the same. What do you know, there's radiating out pressure waves that dissipate in a way such that it's traveling similarly in a given direction that looks very similar to the very thing that I was saying that it was in the first place. And so now, it must be the same thing, but it's slightly different and less. I'm seeing you be aware that fluid dynamics means propagating pressure waves and they can look like particles or fields, depending on how they ultimately interact, fray off, decay, and so on. And you're trying to come to me as if you know better. But sure, let's go with whatever you want to say it is, so that way you feel better about the situation you're in. You get it? Jeez. Boring. Anyways, I want to talk about my airship, but there's a reason why I actually talked about that. Because this material that I talk about is effectively a bunch of different balls and some slighting plates that go through them that act like a bunch of dynamic changing structures as they slide and move and change a given volume of area to the given volume of area around it. But in so doing, it also helps cool it and very quickly change it, but also very, very rapidly give you extra heat into your engines. Along with field energy potentials, because if you didn't know, it's not just light, it's not just pressure, and it's not just vibrations. There's also static charges and the magnetosphere that you're going to go through, because this is essentially a big magnet going through a magnetosphere that has a lot of residual energy that you can capture as a result of that. Different heat effects also give you different effects. You can ultimately have heat from the outside, or a lack of heat from the outside be used in this manner, because it can definitely become a transfer of too much or a collector of heat around. Now, the reason why I don't like the transfer thing is because it sucks. It's so cold inside the cabin after a bit. It's kind of the worst, but it will get you places for what it's worth. But humidity is so much better as a result of that. Yeah, like humidity is much better. Yeah, that was a real cool one, because it's like, this is polarized, this is not, this has more electrons, this needs electrons, electron flow kind of thing. This is going to be moving and doing work. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit by having this given pressure differential, this given not pressure differential, and then I get, with a given amount of nitric oxide, carbon dioxide, different particle distributions in the air, and, presto changeo, yada yada, bing bang boom, I get electricity and heat that I can use to ultimately create a greater and greater amplificatory process for my engine. It's supposed to go into space, though, for what it's worth. That's why I designed it. I designed it to go into space. But for what it's worth, it has this different type of, sort of oval pancake, kind of goes down a little bit. It's got a little bit of, at the top, but you'd be surprised once you get up to a really high atmosphere, it's more like you're resting on a lower kind of, you need a big surface area instead of a big volume. You're kind of trying to balance on the surface area of water once you get up there. Yeah. So that's kind of how that has to work. But it's not really for individuals that want to do really high speed, high maneuverability, all that. Probably ever going to be used for that. It's supposed to be able to take up to 5,000 pounds to get up to that point, but it can go and get stretched to about 7,000. Technically, people have done 10. I don't recommend 10, but you can do 7, okay, for sure, and still get pretty darn close. And while you'll have to travel for a while, you'll be able to get out of the atmosphere pretty easily. The reason why I talk about the 5,000 is because it doesn't take very long with the engine that I have to ultimately get you into orbit, right? And so now you're very much out of the atmosphere, and you're orbiting as a spacecraft, which is the whole reason for it. All right, but this one's a ionic plasma type for the very structure that I'm talking about for the airship that moves around, right? But I didn't like that very much. So you're going to have to deal with that for me. So I'm that guy. Yeah. so I wanted an actual engine for it to use, all right, that can take advantage of like the car I talked about for Stirling effects and heat effects and charge difference, like all the things effectively that you can try and get. Yeah. Like this little battery, and then because I don't like how little we properly take advantage of what's around us. Okay, but in space it's different. Now, it does get electricity just from light. It's just not as efficient as it really could be. It's mostly a field effect. So during that, because there is electrically conductive material and the gapping is such that with a vacuum around that, it allows for an easier transfer to the electrode for a quantum tunnel vibrational Hall effect sort of thing that I do. It then makes it allow for it to tunnel a little bit more easily as they get closer using the vibrations around, and then it becomes a dampener. So it's like very stiff, but then it's like now it's dampened inside as a moving device that's going down into itty bitty tiny little nano distances, which really helps out with the whole vacuum and tunnel effect, and produces a lot more of that electricity from light and heat differences, as it's effectively a Stirling engine. Big boy though, and when you have an atmosphere, it's a lot easier. When it's less of an atmosphere, now we're going to get into light and charge field differences that have with charged particles around, and you being in a ground state that you are, and some conversion like processes, quantum physics properties, for those given fields, and the light and charged particles being captured and then allowed to dump as a electron redox flow, a electron and no longer become charged. I now have more electricity. Now, the reason why electrons are so kind of meh as a reactant is that they have very low mass, even if you can accelerate them quite significantly and even try and densify them into a gas, which is actually kind of how that works to a degree of what I'm using for like the big ship bladder thing, right? Structure, the buoyant structure. It's also like the movement of the charged particles is being captured and then redirected out as an opposing, and so it'll push on that field and then dump its electron as it does that to both make electrons, but then it dumps that electron into accelerating it and pushing against another one, and so I'll be able to capture that as efficiently as possible. But again, it's still very low amounts of actual movement. So we're going to move on from that, because while it's cool and it's efficient, it's not very powerful. In fact, it's pretty garbage. Even with my, I'll bunch a bunch of electrons up, and if I pulse them in the right way, which pulsing is a really fun little word of like, this is going to be seen like, because it's moving like this, and it's vibrating like that, and it happens to spin like this, as a negative versus a positive, which, because it basically accelerated and has a version of a plasma Z-pinch going on effectively, it then becomes an attractive force to a bunch of other electrons. And then gets accelerated out, but there's an opposing electromagnetic field, and so you're able to get movement from that plasma being moved as electrons, but it's not a lot of mass. So it doesn't matter that I'm firing my laser effectively super fast, even with my charged particles and all the rest of it helping create this effect. And then here's a fucking bigger atom to try and really help it along. It's like, come on, go faster, please. You're giving me nothing here. But I got better at it with the engine. So I really want to talk about the engine, as you can clearly tell, but it's like, look, I want to really nix the whole idea that that is going to be what that is. That's the engine or something. No. I want to really nix the idea that you would have been happy with that, and you're not. And all the rest of it, right? So, suck it up. So, the engine is an entirely different multi-stage, like the torque converter, the Lemke cycle at this point is definitely involved. So it's like it's getting thrust, attractive repulsive forces, and then I'm also sucking in with a Stirling, and so I get a lot of different types of cycles all together in one that is a programmed type of event. So we call it a Lemke cycle because it's instead of like my single cylinder balanced piston, all that. This has only got 65 views on YouTube right now. Go check it out. But I effectively go over that where I have a bottom instead of just heads. I also have a bottom, and then I have a girdle underneath that, and then a different kind of offset to the crank and all this other stuff. But what it means is exhaust gets recycled into the bottom, but then it gets pushed out. But of course, it's going to create a vacuum underneath, and so I use nitrogen because I have a nitrogen filter from the super turbo compressor that I'm using that allows for me to pour in nitrogen as a blow-off valve into the bottom after I draw a vacuum through the crankcase and heads. Now, what that means is I get a secondary pulse of energy to my turbo, right? As the nitrogen is there just enough to make sure that I don't have a vacuum to try and basically resist and become a parasitic loss that I can only try and recapture to a certain degree as it goes back down and expands. But you see, the faster the piston moves, the harder it is and the more detonation-like velocity of combustion you need to achieve to be able to ultimately gain increased horsepower and torque. It's actually better because of that second pulse to push it for efficiencies into the turbine for the super turbo part to allow for the air injectors and fuel that I'm using, because I use fuel and air injector. So fuel injector, direct injection, and fuel. So as I direct inject fuel and very little air, it then vaporizes as it injects in and draws a vacuum at the top. I need fewer amounts of fuel because now it's much more atomized to molecularized in terms of its fuel. And then because of that vacuum energy that's going on and destabilizing its gas, hydrogen and carbons were much more likely to burn at a much lower pressure, but now I'm going to reintroduce more pressure and some more air and a little bit of a spark. And then I'm going to burn it as I need to, as it's a delta V container now, that I can burn with higher oxygen content to a more atomized, molecularized air that is really just vaporized fuel. That burns it much more rapidly and will move it much more quickly and will burn much more thoroughly as a result with fewer nitrogen oxides. Now, as a result of it doing that, which I've talked about a couple of times, I can pulse in the air 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and get it to move, creating a expanding movement of a vortex that acts more exertively onto the piston head and the result of chamber inside, even though the central part is more or less closer to a lower pressure. It still achieves a higher efficiency doing that and allows for me to gain, with less fuel, more captured energy as well, because as the exhaust will then get placed into the bottom part of the chamber, it then helps expand the exhaust, basically the exhaust stroke. It helps expand the bottom to help with the exhaust stroke, and then next time during its intake cycle, it then more rapidly wants to blow out, and now need a smaller flywheel to be able to gain an advantage in terms of weight and power for torque efficiency for a given amount of fuel consumed. That's why it's a Lemke cycle. Well, this is effectively a very similar version. Gases, particles, all that are going to be stored, separated, and burned differently to a given type of plasmification and ionic separation that allow for a recombination, exothermic reactivity of the given gases, and particle distribution wise, if it's dust, I can kind of sometimes get away with oxygen and iron. I can sometimes get away with nickel, silicons, stuff like that. So that allows for me to replace in that given heat and expand it back into regular air, N2s and O's, but also making sure that the hydrogen, the H2O, water that we have in our air, gets collected in that area and improves its efficiency by increasing density, like a water or methanol injection after top dead center and combustion has already occurred, which is the reason why it's not a water methanol injection. It puts in fuel, it doesn't burn the fuel until really pretty much at all, like for what it's worth. It doesn't have enough air to burn fuel. It doesn't have enough heat either to burn it, or pressure for that matter. Once it's sparked, well, it's effectively a lean mixture that wouldn't produce enough energy at all to even move the piston very much and sustain the engine. But when you continuously re-add air, it continues to burn, creating a rocket engine-like effect that improves its efficiency. And of course, there's still the bottom, which is not a thing done by any of the other aforementioned cycles. Which means it's a Lemke cycle. And that's another reason why this is another Lemke cycle. Vacuum here, air going in, or gases, combusted fuel, fuel going into a more voluminous state to gain heat. Then I allow for recompression-like effect. Then it's just enough to start a given type of reaction, exothermic, while allowing for, because that's charge fields and a sudden collapsing of field states into an exothermic amount of energy as it's getting compressed, or near its version of a top dead center like effect for its ultimate full pressurization, right? So as it does this though, I then introduce more ionized, or in this instance you have to think of it more like an alkaline or acidic made element or composition of gases that are then introduced and allowed to form exothermic reactivity styles of energy production. Of course, it doesn't take much energy to do that, just filtration for the battery generator. Bingo! The battery generator always saves the day. It's just made better, and then it has the little torque converter spin that helps with increased pressures, and it helps as a flywheel and a gyroscopic effect. And as I can use that on a pendulum-ish sort of, well, not pendulum, gyroscopic, or that kind of thing, where it's like it's able to move pretty substantially in multiple 360 kind of ish degrees. It doesn't have a full 360. It still has to take in air, and it has to move it somewhere else. But I got pretty good, decent movement. It's about 300 and I think 40 around that. That's max for any of its given movement. So, but still pretty good, and I like that. So, works out very well. The most majority-wise-ish of the storage of energy is basically in tanks, just like before. So the tanks and the battery storage are part of both the structure, so that way there's less weight, and the engine itself is also a part of the structure. Everything's a part of the structure. It has to be, in order to remove as much weight as possible and be as strong as possible. And they have to be big enough to allow for a very large capture area for higher degrees of efficiency, especially at those higher altitudes. So that's why it happens to work the way it does in that sense. But it's another version of an in to outwards approach. Out, once it does that, it then allows for a separation given the filter tube battery structures. And so that allows, because that's this exhaust, okay, for you to then separate and recombine into a main mixing chamber of multiple mixing chambers, and then we can store as we get to the correct altitude. This is a programmed in the ECU thing, so you're going to have to deal with that. But at higher altitudes, there's much lower temperature, but there's a lot less pressure. But because you're able to take that condensing effect, and typically you're able to move fairly fast, I can now store nitrogen and oxygen. So nitrogen's going to be on the outside, oxygen's on the inside. I use a vibratory type effect to elicit a photonic release of the liquid oxygen to then go into the nitrogen. Now the nitrogen's fine with soaking up most of that light, because I can cool that a lot easier, because it takes a lot more effort to condense and compress oxygen. But it's pretty necessary, considering, but I don't really want to give you oxygen, liquid oxygen. I don't really want to do that. I'm not a big fan of giving you liquid oxygen. So, there's that. But liquid nitrogen, oh yeah, all day, every day, that's fine. Pre-charge your system, have fun with it, But, not liquid oxygen. And then the rest of it's mostly a bunch of electricity that allows for the proper ionification and removal. That's why I call it plasmification versus ion. Ion is too many electrons. Plasma is too little. So, and that can produce heat. But then, if you do it right, then I got ions over here, and it's now like a redox flow, and you get the whole, I'm going to make work energy happen. I got a pressurized system. I'm then also able to do my cool little Z-pinch maneuver. This is going to cost us nothing, because it's already going to need to be there for the flow to be there in the first place. Now, as it goes through a given tube, it has to combine. That's its given type of design, right? But in so doing, in its combination, as it's accelerated, it's going to push what is effectively in the chamber its own version of a bell end. But there's multiple stages, like an onion. In so doing, though, it also has to pass electrons through. That allows for Z-pinch maneuvers front to rear, as it'll accelerate it and then shear it off, and then cause, instead of a curve that I started, a really fast rotation to be canceled into direct acceleration, linear motion. With the light that has to be produced, that gets reflected in this process and bounced back out, and then becomes a constructive to destructive interference. So it's constructive, but then it's destructive as it finally gets taken out into acceleratory processes for the gas that's there to then be accelerated and laminar flowed like a bunch of optical tweezers. And the pressure wave dynamics, like sound tweezers, allows for it to then much more consistently and concisely flow. It starts large, it's already accelerated quite quickly, and it gets smaller, and it accelerates even faster, and then it goes into a bell end. It's bell ending into a bell end. That other bell end there is the main machismo engine, mainsail stuff, right? But the tube can be sealed where that nozzle is and then distributed throughout multiple parts like a Harrier jet, but then that's another version of I can still reintroduce the exothermic and Z-pinch up until their own little type of bell end, which is another type of onion bell end in this instance, instead of the hollow teardrop and then like the inside helical and all the rest of it. Because someone was playing with it in terms of like, this person's listening from whatever and they have a fucking husband, and I'm like, stop that. Okay, no matter what, the answer is always no. I don't cheat, and I'm not the guy you're gonna cheat on your husband with, or your whatever. Okay, like there's a whole thing there. All right, get out of here. It's a whole brain thing at this point for the connected stuff. I'm gonna move on. You'd have to listen to Lore and Reality to know what that is, instead of voices or some shit. I said voices. Yeah, no, move on. You'll have that happen the further back you go into my recordings, and the longer you listen. You'll suddenly realize I'm not feeling or predicting that you do that. I know you are. And it's specific people, though, so I'm going to move on. Now, because those bell ends are more onion-shaped, it allows for a recapture of other air as a Bernoulli to Venturi system. Now, they're not hot enough to burn oxygen and nitrogen together, but it will 100% accelerate and densify the air, and then get captured to a secondary bell end system. And so the faster you go, and there's multiples of them around, and it can switch really fast, because it's effectively a teardrop into the nozzles, so they can just move forward and backwards. And it goes around it, seals it up pretty well like a poppet valve at that point. So it's like, I'm sealed, I'm not sealed, I'm sealed, I'm not sealed. Accelerates it at the end too, which is nice. I have to do that, by the way, to be able to improve efficiencies. But I'm going to move on, because it's like, now my airship, for sure, has multiple around, while changing dynamically incredibly fast. I should let you know, I had to tone it back. I mean that, though. I had to tone it back because it was such a large surface area and diaphragm that it would act very much like an explosive. There's enough energy there for it to do that. It's too high of a pressure wave, so, and for the most part, people didn't like that either, that were inside piloting it, simply because if you managed to make it move that fast for that large of a surface area, you would often have an opposite reaction where you would go through effectively a car crash, an explosion right next to you. So I was like, no, and we're going to make this not kill people or you. But it's buoyant now. It'll never let you do below a certain buoyancy for your given altitude and area. Like if you're in Denver, Colorado, Rocky Mountains, you can hit the ground a lot faster because, well, it's a lot closer. So that's another reason why it was like, yeah, no, it's a super fun little design, works just fine, but this is the main issue with it. It was never really sort of for that, except for those people that were, because I eventually got a retired Air Force and a couple Navies and all that, pilots and so on. And eventually I was like, oh, so you really know how to fly? Because I was like, hey, yo, what's up, Scott Manley? Here's my vacuum, because he's got his Cessna pilot license, and I'm like, this is great. You absolutely can turn it into airplane mode, and it's your airplane for exactly $2,000. Now this is a $10,000 fucking spacesuit, because you're gonna need a spacesuit. Even though it's sealed and everything, you still want a spacesuit, just in case. You know what I mean? But $2,000 for this. And you can go up to space, because that's what it's really kind of intended for. And it's like, well, there's oxygen and nitrogen. Is that the reactive gas? Right, yes, no. Well, carbon dioxide and the rest of the particles, distribution-wise, are stored, which helps with the whole thing. And then there's plasmification of exothermic reactivity gases that then get re-accelerated during this process into a ionic to plasma. So plasma to an ionic boundary layer area to have them not die because they're colder than the plasma, but then they accelerate as a result as really hot, high-speed gases that are in the near light speed limit. Because I'm accelerating them with all the Z-pinches and all the rest of it, and I want to use very little to get very far. And then I have the solar cell and all that stuff going on. So you will accelerate now for very little amounts of fuel, very fast, 1G, for weeks on end. That being said, you're probably going to get to like Jupiter or whatever and like take some hydrogen and some shit, you know. So it's like, for weeks on end is really more like, but wait, I got more fuel during those weeks on end, so I continued my weeks on end for my weeking on end of acceleration. Till eventually you just get to like, well, you're maxed out on traveling the same speed as your gases, so you're not really going to accelerate any further or faster. So you're really just maintaining because it'll start off at 1G, and then like you have to keep going and going until eventually it evens out, and then you're like, back to 0G, even though I'm traveling very fast. But it was like, okay, for what it's worth, for Scott Manley and others, you aren't ever allowed, because there's paperwork involved and all that, for my stuff, for you to be able to buy it, that says you can't, and it won't let you unless you definitely have a spacesuit. You have to have a spacesuit to go to space. And it's like $10,000. Now, granted, you're going to make some of this yourself, and for what it's worth, the $2,000 one is a kit that will definitely be something that you, over a few weekends, will make the entirety of this thing yourself. Now, it's a bit of a bigger kit, but that's one of the reasons why it's shrunk instead of I have to ship a ginormous fucking thing like that. Instead, now it's ultra dense, but it's very heavy as a result, of course. And so it's like, alrighty, so we're going to piece this together. It's only in a couple of weekends, which is nice. I like that because it's mostly electricity and sticking them near each other, and then they'll collectively kind of put themselves together. But you're going to want to make sure you have enough room to do that, because just like the beds that have been vacuumed out, they expand. This is another version of, this is going to expand. Like, it's going to be less dense, but it won't be something that you want in your apartment or house, because, God, it's heavy. Really? It's about 500 pounds. Yeah, it's about 500 pounds, which is, well, not super heavy for what we're talking about in terms of going into space and whatnot. It's kind of hard to move when it's in your apartment and you might have stairs or an elevator or anything. So it's really difficult. You want to do it outside, that kind of thing. It's meant to go outside, obviously. So, there you go. Now, that's the icebreaker to the... Here's a spacesuit that I've actually put on my YouTube already. It's sort of like hydraulic fluid meets metamaterial meets a sensation metamaterial membrane on the inside internal. So a good way to put it is, the membrane on the inside uses charge field static charge differences to elicit to your nerve endings the exact temperature, pressure, and all that sensation as per normal. There's a similar to a liquid crystal like material of fluid that's involved that allows for it to become stiffer, expand, and contract, so you get an exoskeleton. But it also happens to help insulate you, because it has to move through sinew-like material. That's another type of the expansionary and contractionary field effect, like what I was talking about for my vacuum braking design. And then there's an external, skin, that doesn't have permeation outside of light and the necessary being able to capture and make more electricity for you, and the sensation detection that you need and require for it to be transferred to your skin. Then there is a battery generator pack, which, if you want to know where that YouTube video is, the battery generator that I then put a big old description and added so many people on and nobody watched it. Well, guess what, guys? And gals and all that I added it at. It's, basically a couple of videos or a video before, effectively. It's that before that. So the battery generator I added everyone at, it's before that one. So those are those videos that I talk about that given design, although I got an even better one later that doesn't need the expensive materials or some of the carcinogenic materials I was using at the time, which is good, because fuck. Really? Yeah, there was cobalt involved in one of them, and it worked. And of course, it's not going to go and leach into the air or anything else. But I just didn't like that, and I don't want to. Because cobalt is scary, and I don't like that. Same thing with man, we should use arsenic. No! Who said that? No! No! Shut up, you. Shut up. Get out of here. Who uses arsenic anymore? You know what I mean? Who uses cobalt? Although the cobalt was fine for what it was worth. It's just slowly over time it had to be topped up as a charge and air thing that had to be a thing. It lasts for months, though, before you had to do that. So because it just recirculate your air from you and breathing, and then it take out the water, and it basically, because it's pure H2O, and the enzymes break it down, blah blah. But effectively, it meant that you have fresh water coming in that's mineralized off of you, and you get that back. And same thing with the urine, and same thing with your fecal matter, because it will break your fecal matter down. There's that going on. There isn't a butt plug, so suck that up. But there is a bit of a, if you are a man, a definite around your penis and phallus to make sure it's sealed. The anus is a different story, though, because it's more of a moon shape, crescent that sort of tucks in there. It really gives the cleft some definition, I'll tell you, because it's got the suit gives you the cleft, but then you get a little bit of a, so it's really going to accentuate the butt. It looks real good, I'll tell you. Same thing with a package of a man and the curves you've got. It's a bit more form-fitting than you might expect. Unfortunately, it will tell everyone if you're erect, so deal with that. And remember the sensation I talked about stuff? Well, there's computers in your suit, and so if you were ultimately, because there's a bit of a pocket that it can create to try and ultimately have sex, you can do it from afar with women, because there will be an extensionary shaped part that will mimic accurately your phallus. I made it very, very impossible to hack it and make it anything other than the exacting definition of yours that you have. There's no cheating that system, bitches. So, have fun with that. It won't ejaculate, so you're going to have to deal with that, but it will undulate. So have fun. Now, women are, of course, different. There are menstruation cycles, right? And urine is, of course, has a different area where it comes out than a male, okay? Now, the men, your ejaculate is fine because it will play. So, shocker, women, exactingly the opposite. Whatever your pussy shape is, that's what we're getting. All the way down to the lubrication amount. However tight you might be, that's what you're getting. I'm just going to say this. Your ejaculate is consumed, and it's broken down, so deal with that. You're going to get proteins. There's a bit of a slurry sort of soup thing that you get as a food that you're going to eat. You're going to literally eat your shit and skin cells and any hair follicles or anything else. But it will be turned into actually pretty tasty soup for what it's worth. It's pretty tasty. It's got like good texture. It's kind of like, I don't know. There's different versions for what it's worth, but they're all tasty. I had made sure to get a really good chef to make great soup and to turn this with a couple of bioreacting type of designs. Kind of like your gut is a series of bacteria and enzymatic protein reactions that eventually breaks down all of your food and you get elicited energy and whatnot. Well, this is effectively the same version, but in reverse. What you took out from your body, you excreted, will then be reacted in its version of an organ bioreactor system into your food. It's pretty decently self-sustaining because it has light and air and more. And when you move your body, you get a lot of that captured energy. You do have more strength, and there is pressure on your body that is different alongside of a little elephant in the room of it tries to basically force an artificial-esque gravity. It's more of a sort of like a multitude of different connected static charge and magnet to whatever it can ultimately apply to your feet. And so it'll do it to your entire body. But like you'll notice that your arms don't really get the effect sometimes, or your helmet. It's a whole thing. I tried my best on that one, but it's what it is. But the reason why I talk about the whole sex thing is because they were really wanting the sex thing. They being the people of the future that I had basically wanted to do this in and made it effectively. And there was a lot of desire to have sex through the suits. So, from afar, no matter where you are, that kind of thing, you know? Not to mention, there are coupling systems, which is nice. So you don't even have to take off your suits to do the sex. So have fun with that. Anyways, menstruation. We're going back to this with the urethra. All right. So the urethra is different. In this one, instead of like a crescent, and then there's a given wash cycle for the anus. All right. Kind of like a bidet. It's a little bit more involved, but basically that. This one's a slightly different version of the same thing. So you're gonna have to deal with that one. Yeah. But it's more of a donut, toroidal. So, you know, and then it's another version of a bidet. No, it does not interfere with the clitoris. So you're good on that, although it's a little, but you're really not going to feel it. Like, it's built very specifically to not be something you notice or have to worry about rubbing and chafing or any of that, or even creating any UTIs. Just like I had to deal with for the anus, so too for the urethra. Menstruation's a slightly different version, but similar in that aspect. Okay? So that way, it kind of like the cup, you know, system, but different in that it's a little bit more tampon cup-like. So that way you really don't have to worry. Don't want that being a thing that you feel negatively about. But I made sure to get women involved on that design, not just me. So you're going to have to deal with that. So that way it's very much able to change its size and shape and all the rest. So that way it's comfortable for any woman regardless. Okay? So there's that. Alright? Now, I went with that design initial prototype to this more of a still prototype and refinement stage, but different. I used different materials that were still very good and very, very simplistic to be able to manufacture and make, which was nice. This one, I went even further because, like, the skin was a type of copper tube. So, like, tubes of copper that were structured and woven, and that becomes expensive. You know, so I don't like that. And that's to help with water, effectively. I use water and the fluid, the LCD kind of like fluid, that creates a bunch of restructuring and realignment during the movement as a passively active thing. So it'll automatically start doing that, right? But then you can always add more to ultimately get more strength as an exoskeleton. Okay? Now, I didn't want it to be very thick, and I still wanted all the protection, which is why the copper was a part of that, because wind going over changes electromagnetic fields and static charge field differences between the water and the electricity running through, but also it allows for a type of magnetosphere and more dense atmosphere until it gets to the old fleshy stuff. Then it was a pressurized internal volume that rested on skin, right? A bladder-like system, but then allowed for that gap to change contact, you know, for pressure or the field and static charge, but very minute for heat, pressure, so on. You could get shot with it, it wouldn't pierce it, but you'd feel a good bump, you know what I mean? And you had a little bit of a sharp pain to make sure you know that that was supposed to be painful. Because you want to know that that was supposed to be painful. You don't want to just suddenly be like, oh, when you're getting shot. You know what I mean? So, pain's going to be there for that reason. Pain as a sensation is going to be there. Same thing with pleasurable tactile sensations, obviously, right? So, now, that suit had to be changed into an entirely different thing, which is unfortunate because I liked my suit, and it was fine the way it was, but it was also expensive to make. And this is already $10,000, and that would have been about a fucking $50,000 to $100,000 suit. Depending on things. So, now we get into, instead of the metamaterials I was using, we're now using regular types of materials with better vacuum designs. Alright, so you know about the Hall effect, and it's pretty much any real element it seems like can do it. You know what I mean? Just to varying degrees of efficiency and ability and all that, right? This one turns into a much different type. Instead of trying to break things, and slow things down and condense, this is the expansionary, like our muscle sinew, that we're looking for it to expand into for the structure around it, to give us more exoskeleton strength. We still need a skin that's able to maneuver around, which is why I made the ball and plate. Yep. Airship structure. Which means the skin is multiple layers of this that allow for it to stretch, strain, and even heal, which was great. Healing was hard though in a couple of ways, because it has to have a stored amount on tap for the suit, and it'll, like with blood for the liquid that's there, go to it and then repair it using electrical signaling. But it's very hard, dense material that you could be shot with a pretty powerful round here and not feel it. Which is good, because there are micrometeorites and other things like that that I don't want you to get killed by. So that was the main reason why I also made the airship structure the way it is. So, combining designs, you know what I mean? Now, this material is not a standard-like material. This is essentially a multi-composite of diamond-like carbon in a polycrystalline form of regular diamond, with, instead of standard carbon, we're using my aluminum, magnesium, and silicon carbide mix of that very same video for the single cylinder, and how to make that. Manufacture it in mass using molding techniques and pressure and heating and so on. And effectively this is the same thing. But much easier, because I can make it much faster instead of the way I was doing it. Because I don't need to make a big lump for a piston head or something. I can make a bunch of little tiny things. And so that makes it a lot easier. Same thing with like the airship structure. It's a much smaller amount of necessary versions of these. They're bigger, much more robust and stronger as a result. But like, for what it's worth, it's essentially much easier now. So it's effectively all it is. Now, as a result of it acting very similarly to a non-Newtonian fluid, it will spread and very quickly decay into energy any given impact. It also still senses fields because, of course, there's the vacuum and the light and wind or any of the electrical sensation fields that are there that I talked about. This just amplifies it, given the piezoelectric and structuring of the electron tunnel gapping system. Then we have a fluid underneath. Right, now this fluid is effectively a different version of most other electromagnetic type of fluids, or LCD fluids. Okay, in the very real sense, I had to essentially make a brand new type of fluid. It's a bunch of solid particles of powder that are magnetized in a way, but also demagnetized, and then it will expand and contract. And so they will pump around like air and sand, right? But they're very much particles that are able to redistribute themselves and pump around. What that means, though, is that it can become a way of transferring electricity to the membrane underneath, and through the bone-like structure and sinew combo structure that's there that I was using before. Because if you don't know, blood can get into your bones like bone marrow, but there's nothing stating that our muscles can't be a part of our bones, but they're also attached to our bones. So it's fluid mostly where the muscles would be, and then the bones are very rigid, but then muscles can ultimately, with the bones, change their shape and slide, expand within inside of each other to gain more compactness and energy efficiency and strength from the design. Right? Now, the fluid that I designed is effectively a non-solventable, bunch of particles. It uses light based for the muscle contraction sensation, and also information sent from the computer and what you're trying to do from your muscle contraction for the membrane, which is a different version of potentiational and field effect, and then also light based detectors. So a bunch of light in various areas. Then there's a field to field, because your body emits light, okay? But then you also get electrical signals from our nerves and muscle contraction, which elicits fields. Then we also happen to have a pressurized air, so we always are at the right pressure for ourselves. 1 atmosphere, sea level. So that allows for a very small, we're talking a 30-second, less than a millimeter of air that is there for your pressure. But it's distributed evenly throughout your entire body, and you'll never notice that it's there and that small. It's basically to your skin. So that means for the air to move over because you usually sense it with the hair molecules. That's why you have that move with the static and electromagnetic field and pressure differences for the air moving as it can undulate. You won't feel a difference between outside and inside of the suit. The membrane is pretty simplistic, as it's effectively a silicone slash. There's no forever chemicals. Can't do that. Get out of here. composite plastic. So it's like a polyplastic that creates a poly-like crystalline, sliding, stretchy structure within the silicone. That with the piezoelectrics, the light, and all of that can be evenly distributed throughout all of it and very, very thin as a metamaterial. Or composite material, really. Skin, membrane skin. And it's able to handle very high temperature, very high elasticity, and pressures and all the rest that you're going to want, because you could fire mini bullets at this fucking thing, and it's very, very small. It's about a 1/16 of an inch of thickness, and you can fire a 50 caliber round at it, and it's not going to puncture it. So there's that. The bone sinew fluid pump thing. Exoskeleton, you mean? Yes, the exoskeleton. All right, what about it? Very well done. Thank you. Yeah, it can repair itself just like your muscles, and it won't go past a certain point. So there's that. But it's effectively another version of the same silicone, the skin structure, and then several strong pieces of what is effectively our battery generator systems, because they're also sort of your organs for your urine, fecal matter, ejaculate, any of it. The air goes throughout a pack, but also the body, to take in and out water, to wash you and yourself, all the rest of it, for sweat and more. Right? So even your skin cells get taken out, because remember the undulation of the air? Well, it allows for some water to come in, but then it'll effectively, it scrubs it, takes off skin cells and eats it. But it does it while you're already using it. So you don't have to tell it to wash you and yourself. You don't get any beard or hair cutting. But if you want it, it'll just consume it past a certain point, and then it'll all basically be cut from that area around the head and where your face is, if it gets close enough to the skin. Now, the helmet shield, the visor, HUD, that kind of thing, is a one-directional light, like a two-way mirror, right? Except it's got effectively a series of bifurcating S-curves. So it'll reflect it and then go back down. It'll reflect it and it'll go back down. Instead of random directions, it's very specific polarization, constructive and destructive interference. And then there's the quantum slot experiment bell curve that allows for that to then be reconstructed with other light and redistributed across the entire visor as normal light. Diffused perfectly and accurately shows you exactly the light coming through, but no light can go through the other way. And as a result of it doing this, brighter becomes something that it'll just take as electricity for the multiple layers it has with the multiple holes and the multiple little lens and everything that are going on, while also with fiber optics allowing for you to evenly push in any computer screen you want, GUI information, any of that. Because of the electromagnetic fields, you have your heart rate, you have your blood pressure, all of it. You even get constantly scanned as to any and all possible cancers and more. It detects your urine and your fecal matter as to any cancers. Any of the skin cells and sweat and blood that might come from that, which wouldn't be blood, but mostly just sweat and all that, can detect to see if there's any diseases going on or issues that you might be having. It is extraordinarily safe and very much a full constant body scanner. The suit itself for the helmet and the body are also their own versions of my type of God OS programming. I have light-based coherer effect, standard transistor types like silicons for if exclusives, then blah blahs and so on, resonators, energy storage or memory storage, depending on your persuasion of thought process there. So long as the information is stored, you get the picture. But the visor itself is its own calculator because of the fiber optics that you can push in and the light coming in with the detector and sensation, no, sensors, not sensation, that ultimately allow for you to calculate as it comes in. You only need to have it set up, and then, like with qubits, superpositionally collapses to give you the information you're looking for. Instead of qubits, though, it's just light waves to ultimately give you the information you want, so it has less energy necessary to do it for your monitor to have the right display of information in your HUD visor combo. The other elephant is you can see down to radio waves and all the way up to gamma. As normal light, you filter to see and know that that's the gamma wavelength light effect, color that you're looking for, or series of colors combined so you know it's that. You can see through objects a lot better than you think, so you're going to be a lot safer as a result. It runs on very little energy, and the fact of the matter is that if there is any atmosphere, or any light, or any magnetosphere, or any charge field differences, or you move at all, or there's a vacuum around, you will absolutely be able to make electricity. There are several different types of solar cells and thrusters throughout it. You're not going to get a double jump or a jetpack, so suck that up. But it's mostly in case you fucking get yeeted away from your ship, you can get back. It also likes to flatten things, although you're going to get compressed during that, and basically turn you into a big wing, like a literal wingsuit. It has a different style for the air bladder stored where the shoulders are and the helmet is, to then pop out, so you have a big, however buoyant you need and much lift you can get, parachute to land if you happen to get yeeted from your ship and you need to fucking, I guess, what is that even, what different movie, I mean so many different movies, anyways, point is, land from orbit into either Mars or Earth or fucking Venus, because truthfully it's so heat insulative you can definitely exist and live on Venus in this suit. Or choose to be on the bright side of Mercury, although I would really choose not to do that because, well, yes, you'll live and it's enough heat resistance and cooling of an effect for the IR emittance at that point that you wouldn't have to worry. But still, I wouldn't do it. So, there's that. But it's there's heat resistance now, and there's IR emittance? Well, yes, but you didn't ask, so here's the big reveal. Fluid has... Put the fuck off, bitch! They're garbage. Look at all my energy being created, too, while I do that. No, it's effectively a bunch of rigid, like or like a heatsink fan arrays. But instead of it being like heatsink long, they're rigid little kind of spiky spikes, like big foam structures it'll create that it shoot off a lot of light as much as it can do. Or if you need it for cooling, like in convection styles for Venus, then it's kind of similar. To be fair, though, your battery pack also helps with that. It's not just the skin. The battery pack really helps, and so does the helmet and a lot of other places you're probably not going to need to have be something in the way of you moving, that kind of thing. The stomach and other organ and all that sinew system is effectively like our endocrine system. Like we have like little nodules and whatnot, and then there's fluid that we push around as we do our little lifting with our, calves there, and then we squat and whatnot. And then next thing you know, it gets lifted up, and then, oh, what do you know? It's now filtering out the toxins in our blood. Kind of a similar setup. Although you can sit still and it'll pump it anyways, so who gives a shit? There's vacuums and pumps are pretty easy and a Stirling-like effect for your pressurized, fluidic ass body. So, it's another reason why it's like, you thought you were incorrect. You should have thought before you said something. Because, oh yeah, man, I'm fucking great at this. You think I'm not smart? Look at my smarty smarts. But that's a nice, cool little way of getting it done. It's not some story. These are real concepts that really will work, and I really can build, and I have all the designs on how to manufacture, put it together, sell it, and more. It's really just the fact that I have no money, no materials, no tools, and I need help to do it. I'm not some rich bitch like the corpos and government elites and some creators out there. I'm an SMI individual, seriously mentally ill, who needs SSI. Which effectively turns it into, you're an idiot. Shut the fuck up. You don't know anything about me. We're going to move on. So, I get angry at people that think I can do something or can't do something. Stop being an ableist piece of shit garbage. Denier, deflector, straight up gaslighting bastard, and more. You gatekeeping little munchkin maggot douche. I like my designs. I've continuously refined them. I've not stopped in the slightest. Not once. This spacesuit design is $10,000 for that reason. You effectively have a supercomputer strapped to a biologic, practically speaking, suit that's synthetic, that has an exoskeleton and, you guessed it, constructive and destructive interference for charged particle, like a magnetosphere using light as it will move it around you. And then a actual magnetosphere with sensation, constant physical detection of your body and what might be going on. that's better than your fMRIs. X-rays has, which I didn't even touch on, but it's got this cool thing called an acoustic resonance frequency that goes through your body like an infra and ultra and other sonics, because like you're already going to have, you know, sound go through you and you want to hear that sort of thing. You want to feel it too. So what it effectively means is using sound waves and the light and the fields, I can scan to very, very small accurate degrees, neuronal splendal levels of accuracy, and their activity going on deep within your brain. As that's a series of detectors and all the rest of the sensors that are necessary, but you're going to need them anyways, so suck it up. You're going to get constantly scanned all up in there. There's no privacy for you. But it's a good thing, because we need to make sure in case you pass out, you're thinking of hurting yourself or others, you know, stuff like that. You know, same thing with the whole telepathic communication. I need to grrr, ding, 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 ding. No! 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 Let's just make it fucking like field effect shit. What the fuck are you doing over there? No! I thought and therefore you got and received the thought text. Or message or whatever fucking communication type that you want. So you get it. Then on top of that, this is the best part, it can force you to sleep or be more alert, because if I can detect you like that, I can also give you a little electric jolty zapparoo and magnetic buzzy buzz resonance, like EMI, electromagnetic stimulation. Actually, that's S, not I for interference. Then field effect stimulation is emerging but still a thing, and so do we also know lights can help, not for your eyes, actually through the brain and skull and dura mater into your brain structures, and increase elicitations or decrease elicitations of neuronal firing, protein pump firing, sodium, calcium, ion exchange rates, and more, although that one's more of a highly specific, more technical version. Instead, for the therapy that they use, they really were only looking for structures to be more excited or less excited, which is fine, because combined with this, then I have all of that high specificity. Even for your little spiny whine and neuronal wands and the nervy nerves go bumpity bump the right way. You know, the heart can get restarted. The little elephant in that room for your gut means you'll be made to poop. You're not gonna not poop. Or urinate for that matter too. Or be able to lift your arms even though you didn't send that signal. Or you can't send that signal because you have a spinal injury and some unfortunate accident perhaps. Or you're just a person that already had that. But now you don't have to worry, because this means you now have the ability to move those arms just fine. And even contract your own muscles, which is great because it can send electricity into the nerves past the broken break in your connection. Broken part of the nerve connection. Correct. You think I'm the one in trouble here, that it can't be done, but actually you're an idiot and it can be done. All the pieces do work, and if you were staying up to date on any of the things I talked about in science, then you would have known that this is possible, and you're an idiot for thinking it's not. You just don't give enough money for research and development. But meanwhile, I already have a way of doing it. I already have the programming. I already have the amplificatory processes. I already have everything already. You're already in an exoskeleton practically. Deal with it, bitch. I've definitely got it going on. I know how to do it. I just need money and people. So there's that. Now, that's another reason why there's an organ type structure, which is effectively a different type of organ structure for the bladder system, is what they're going with. Is it bladder system? It's not. It's a dynamic, changing, rigid airship structure. Which definitely works, by the way. Even if you don't think that that stuff will work, I don't give a fuck, truthfully. You do know that that one will. So now it's like, 500 pounds? Well, you're going to have to put some liquid in there. That's fine, I've got liquid. You got liquid nitrogen? Oh yeah, I can pre-charge that. Alrighty, do you have... Which, by the way, you have to build this suit, even though it's $10,000. I get it, it's expensive. But it's one hell of a suit. I think it's well worth the price in every dang way. Which, by the way, you are technically able to never have to leave the suit. It'd have to be very, very, very cold for a very long time. And a very just perfect, just not enough pressure, not too little pressure environment for it to basically start draining energy. But for what it's worth, you moving and eating food and everything will keep it going for a while. So try and fart your way, I suppose, with the solar cells and charged particles. On over to some place where you can land and get some shit done, I suppose. You know, time to go do like a bunch of mining and freaking refinement crap, and I'll make another airship or some shit. I don't fucking know. You know what I mean? Like, it's like textbook fucking Minecraft, except you're stuck in a suit, bro. Like, you ain't never gonna, there's no atmosphere, you're fucked. Like, you are gonna have to get off a planet. It might not have an atmosphere, which I had to deal with once back in the day. And that was a fucking shit show for a future that I had been able to be a part of and experience, but it's very unlikely to occur, at least so far. So there's that kind of thing. That's where time probabilities are a bit of a thing that changes your deterministic to chaotic. It all depends on the choices of stupid people around you. Free will tends to get in the way of progress. That's your introduction of chaos in choices for a given chemical, organic, generator, battery, roco-basilisk computer that you are, that allows for you to make far more choices that could be very harmful and detrimental to progress and advancement of others, such as myself, or even yourself. We're going to move on, because, alright, so you got the suit. That one's going to take you about the same amount of time as making the airship, which is fine, because the airship's pretty easy. It's not that difficult to really make, but for what it's worth, topping it up with liquid nitrogen, totally doable. You know, having some electricity as you plug it into your wall, doable. You know, having it float up there on a nice little hopefully got a really strong anchor and a nice cable, and let it charge itself perhaps. You know what I mean? Then there's the you having to, while that's doing its thing, build a fucking spacesuit you're gonna live inside of, fucking almost. You know what I mean? It's gonna be your lifeline. Like, if this, whoo boy, goes wrong, you've got this. Somebody want to do it well. It comes with a full set of instructions with the box and the kit and everything else, and there's online stuff and all the rest of it. Even this will be cited as how I came about the design in that YouTube for my company name, username YouTube channel. Alright? That being said, it is what it is. You can just buy it more or less mostly pre-made, and then we have to ship it and then make it all there. But it's really not going to be different, and it's actually not as difficult as people will try and make it out to be, for what it's worth. The suit is, while expensive, there's a reason for that. Mostly just because of how much it takes to effectively put together several pieces that you'll, structurally put together. Like, it's going to covalent bond fuse chemical stuff when you put it together. It's all part of the kit, and that's why it takes a while. Right? But, yeah, it is not coming apart. Once it's there, it's not coming apart. That's the elephant. Once it's built, it's not going to change much in terms of its size and shape. So you'd better get used to that, yeah. And the powdery fluid is built into you building the design. All of it's good to go. It's mostly that people don't have any of the paperwork to go to space, don't have any astronaut training at all, certainly are most likely, because it's only $2,000, not a fucking pilot. Well, it's the most forgiving airship ever and airplane possible. You are very much at the mercy of the fact that there's an FIA or whatever it is, and all of the governing body for space travel. Better give us your exacting detailed space travel plans. Better give us the time and date and all this other stuff. You know what? And you're not even allowed until you have a fucking spacesuit from me or comparable NASA. There are a couple other people that you can buy it directly from, but they're way more expensive, just as an FYI. So, even the pre-built one, which will still cost you more, it's a $20K, is still less expensive than other people. So there's that, yeah. So it's what it is. And then if you want to get the ship and everything, that's, instead of $2,000, that is a $5,000 different, you know what I mean? It's $7,000. That's why I said different at the end there. Doing the whole, yes, no, I know that, but it's actually 7,000. Sorry about that. But my suit, it also can display your face in many different ways. You can even do like cool little holographic or changes and all that stuff. I get to a point though where it's like you're not allowed to go too far. You're going to look like what you look like, but with like maybe smoother skin or something like that. But you can instead do an avatar. I like the avatar ones. You ever seen Borderlands 2? There's this character that has like a katana and is a sniper or whatever. Zero? Yeah, Zero. Yeah, and he's got like the little smiley face and all that. It does that. And it'll actually do it in such a way that because of the depth of field of the visor, it looks like it's floating and it happens to be 3D. Oh yeah, and the little monitor and all that is a type of version of the 3D too. It only has so much depth of field though So, because it's effectively multiple angles which can all act together as multiple little tiny monitors. They're very, very high resolution. We're talking down to the very photon size of accuracy of changes. And because they're right next to each other, up, down, depth, and then side, and, diagonal angles and all that, you get a lot of different monitor real estate on that. Yeah, so that's another reason why it's 10K. So, it's like, you're going to pay for that. It's a lot of incredibly advanced technology for that suit. And that suit's your safety of life. You're going to pay 10K for that suit. In fact, if anything, I should be making you pay more, but I figured nobody would really buy it if I really had you pay for it for the real price that I really probably should, although I'll make profit on this for what it's worth because of the mass dumpage of the demand. So it's like, there's a huge demand. Well, it's only $2,000. It's only 10K. So it's like, ooh, yeah. I'm going to saturate that bad boy. Boom, 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 boom. Ah! Yes, I'm doing numbers. Stonks, baby. Let's go. It's going to be a global thing for what it's worth, and you're going to have to pay for shipping for wherever it is that you ultimately end up wanting it shipped to, because it's going to clear customs no matter what. There's no explosive or anything that's bad. Nothing's illegal for being there. So it's just like, well, have fun. Do. I'm over here. And you have a big old spaceship, airship thingy. Yeah, I know. It's more of an airplane airship kind of spaceship thing. Yeah, But that's the fun part, because it's like, well, I can hover just fine off of buoyancy, and then using the undulational type of effects of wind going around to actually drag me forward and provide still just enough lift with the buoyancy I have to stay in place and reduce the aerodynamic effect of the negative part of airships in general. But what I liked, because I started this off before I got to this point, and you'll have to go back if you don't remember or you skipped. Navy, retired Navy, and Air Force got a hold of this and built, remember the air races or time attack races that they had for for Red Bull, for airplanes, right? Well, this is what that turned into, because it can do 15G any direction. So it's like acceleration 15G, lifting straight vertical 15, climb diagonal 15G, corner like you're freaking pivoting with a big heavy gravity center point near the moon, 15G. Do you want 15 G's? Probably not, but I can give it to you. So it turned an awful lot into it's like a meanwhile me, look at the ring in the air. It's terrible. Get it? Because the pun, it tears away if they hit it. Terrible. Anyways, good stuff though, because what it meant was they were held by the airships I'm selling anyways. And it's also in a vacuum, and it's not very it's strong. It could be ripped pretty easily, that kind of stuff. But what it meant was, because there's 5,000 pounds for it, it's like, this is a big circle or a really small one, like we did in video games, right? And then we had pylons, right? Of a full actual race course, big enough for all of these suckers to actually fly. They've got, that's right, hairpin turns that nobody would normally put. But it's like, no, you said you can do 15 Gs. Go fuck yourself. You're done 15. Meanwhile, I shall soup it up with even stronger stuff. That is true, I can give you that. They are add-ons for what it's worth, if you need it. And you'll go even harder, G. This will make it so you can do 50. I don't think you'd want to do that, but okay. I don't know if that... 50G literally kills a man. No. Split second. It was, but only 2 to 15 milliseconds or something. Okay, sure. Yeah, sure. Fair. Literally, right? Like, have you ever experienced even 15? And I'm like, that's a car crash, bro. I don't want to deal with any of that. That's why I'm just the putt around guy. I'm just the guy that sells it. You know what I mean? I just putt around. It's super efficient. I can, enjoy myself. I even got my own little house up in there. You know what I mean? I made it a little bigger. Now it's my own little Airship RV. I live in my Airship RV house thing. It's registered as my house. I have my own, fucking thing for my land or something. I don't know. I forget what it was, but it's like, I need a place of residence so I can definitely actually have mail. They're the worst about this, actually. You can, forward or general delivery, blah, blah, but then, the government hates you and they'll get rid of your license and shit if you don't have an actual place of residence. It's another version of the bourgeois, aristocratic, capitalistic structure we have that means you need to be a part of the serfdom of the lords that own your land and allow you to stay in their kingdom. So you have a place that I will send shit to. I need to know where you are at all times. For you to be considered someone I will give a fuck about. This is bullshit. What is that? I don't know, but that's a genuine thing. That is literally what it is, by the way. It's like you need to pay to ultimately be considered something in the government. By paying others that, reasonably speaking, for human rights here, you should be allowed as an inalienable right. It's my freedom of life, bro. I can't live without this shit. You know what I mean? What the fuck is that? Anyways, you have to have it, though, in order to actually live in the air or in an RV or in a van. You can get away with a bit for a while, but tax purposes, insurance, a lot of stuff, you actually need an actual address. So if you don't have friends, you don't have family or whatever, it kind of fucks with you. Because then you can't really actually have that, and you get screwed over by that. It's really shitty. I already did a whole talk about it on my YouTube. It's the Dome, I think, traveling back to Springer or Eagerville, that's the picture on it, but it's with my mom, for what it's worth. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, though, so it's whatever. But she had to take me to, it's a whole thing, yeah. But I'm going to move on, because it's that is something I was doing, which is cool. It was fun, for what it's worth. Especially when it's man, I basically can just, have a pole in the ground, and that's good enough. My ground is effectively a bunch of, I'll just rain down whatever collected humid air down onto my crops, and I'll just collect solar and, some wind energy, and do my fucking, groceries that way, I suppose, and, print out and or extract a lot of the protein. I can get the amino acids and minerals and vitamins, of course, that I'm going to need. Got the creatines all up in there. Got all the things that I'm going to need and want. I can get fungi and molds if I need to break it down in a particular way for any helpful types of, ground, remineralization, revitamization, fertilization, right? But it's like, yeah, no, there goes my fecal matter. Plop. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, but not really, though. It's really just fertilizer. But people never think about that. Fun stuff, though. But the whole reason why I did it was because it was like, well, Scott Manley would probably want this, so I'll make one of these. And I'll have him go over to the moon after I go to the moon as a PR campaign move on my YouTube channel. And then I go and establish a moon base and then fly back to Earth with my constant 1G acceleration and then my 5,000 pounds. But I was like, no, I made it bigger for this one, so I actually came in with 20k worth of shit and me. So it's like, look at all my 3D printers. Look at all my soil. Look at all my bioreactors. I'm gonna dig into the moon. I'm gonna seal it off and definitely create with all these lights and 3D printers all of my fucking standard pressurized atmosphere in a terrarium-like design where I definitely have more than enough oxygen and heat and all the rest. I've got magnets that keep me down in place like I'm always experiencing 1G. There's also vacuum strings for what it's worth. It helps. But I now have an entire actual moon base. Look at me and my moon base. I did it myself. That's my moon base. I then manufactured another fucking... Yeah, I carried it back. I have 20,000. All the 20 is gone, practically. Might as well carry some more with me. Then I just had it as an automatic that I take that and then I send it with an airship over to whomever wants, like, to build their own and shit. Straight from the moon! You guessed it! Your fucking airship! Manufactured on the moon with this guy's company, Xenon Realities. That's right. Can you imagine how good that PR is? There's no fucking way, They're not gonna fucking not buy it. There's no way you'd buy some other persons that didn't come from the moon, that didn't actually go to the moon with their airship or anything else, and didn't build a moon base. What are you, fucking stupid? Why would I go with that? I would go with the guy that's actually proven his shit. Here's $10,000 for your suit. You used that suit the entire time. Yes, I did. You're getting wrecked over there. Scott Manley would absolutely love this. Oh, that's right. I have to get the fucking stupid... Still, I could play around in the plane. Look at me. Woohoo! Yeah! Meanwhile, I'm just so happy that people like it, truthfully. You know what I mean? I'm shelling out the butt, though, for what it's worth. Like, just never ending. Look at all my airships and space travel that's just suddenly going. I use the moon as my manufacturing. I am that clean and efficient. I don't even dirty your planet at all. It's nothing but solar all the way here. Okay. Meanwhile, here's some moon ice. I'm selling it to you. Here's a couple of moon gems and shit. Here's some dust, I guess. I don't need this. Raking in the moolah. Meanwhile, after that, it was like, the market's saturated. So very saturated. I've got all this scientific shit. Meanwhile, NASA's like, knock, 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 knock. Military, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, well, if you want to get some, you can pay me. You really do a contract for exclusivity? No. Damn you. So it turned into like, I supply all of them. That's when the Navy and remember the Air Force, like, they retired, and that's how they got a wind of this, besides like the YouTube stuff. And it's like, we've got the whole thing, and then it turned into whoop, training. They're like, we're gonna put our own engines on it. We have 5,000 fucking pounds of fuel if I want to. Yeah, no, okay, but that's an entirely different shape. Okay, could we not maybe? The point is, yeah, they did their whole thing, and it's like, what's up over there? They're like, we're commandeering one of these. Commandeering, is that what they call it over in the United Kingdom? We needed it for some emergency. I could just sell it to you. We are not looking at this. Oh, are you not? I'm pretty sure you are. Anyways, that one was fun for a bit. Because, like, think about how overwhelming the demand was at that point. It was like, no, these are the very first original off the moon. I have a stock here on planet Earth, but it's all going to be coming from the moon after this. These are the most expensive ones you can buy. $2,500. Meanwhile, I'm looking at some of them going like, it's 150,000 bare minimum for you to just like have a small little section. I'm like, whatever. I'm the one that's just selling them, you know. It's up to you. I don't care. It's not that bad. I made so much money. I had like over $1 billion after a while. It was so fucking fast. I just got launched. Like my manufacturing genuinely all automated on the moon. It costs like nothing. Like, who's going to stop me from manufacturing on the moon? I need to pay taxes for my shit. My manufacturing and my fucking place of business is in my country on the moon. What's shipping? I can just ship it with my airships directly to the person. I don't even need to use electricity. It's got it already. I am the cleanest shipper ever. Logistics are perfectly handled. I literally don't even need anyone to do any of the work. Suck it up. It's all automated. Around the world, around the world. I'm fine with waiting a couple of hours for it. That's true, most people are. Meanwhile, there's just never-ending ships to the moon and coming back in. I'm laughing my butt off, just going, moolah, 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 ooga chaka, moolah, moolah, moolah. Making so much money. Fun times though. For what it's worth, the investors got theirs, and I bought them out. It's all mine. Full, complete creative control and everything. It was fine, though. They got like a couple $1 billion out of it, so I didn't have any problems. I was like, look at me making all the money. Look, I'm going to test Wi-Fi to the moon with my ships. I'm going to use Wi-Fi now too. Fuck it. Look at my bandwidth capacity. It's so much bigger and better than yours. To the moon, NASA, SpaceX, all of the space agencies. Could we use your bandwidth? We have Artemis and stuff going on. Oh, really? You need to pay me for the ISP that I've got here. My country on the moon says that you can't get within this area. What are you gonna do? Yeet you off the moon? Try and come back. Meanwhile, I'm like, man, you know, I go to the moon often enough. I might as well start a family over there. Start a family on the moon. I got citizens. Got a fucking government and shit. It has to be recognized. I've got like the equivalent of genuine like weapons of mass destruction up there. Which is always how they get recognized, you know what I mean? With manufacturing, GDP happening too. And a currency. The moon dollar. Otherwise known as, and this is genuinely what I called it, so suck it up. I'm a trolley troll. It's Connie bucks. Like the human female vagina. Cunny. Bucks. Yeah, I'm a massive troll. You have no idea. I made all of the most illegalist porn all up in there for my monies. I was like, yeah, baby, you're going to have to look at this shit every time you want to use it. I got a minting press. Look at this fucking shit. It's digital too. Holy fuck. It's tied to actual labor and GDP and genuine assets. It's legitimate as fuck, bro. I can't even say that about fucking cryptocurrency. Fucking Connie bucks up in here. Well worth over $1 trillion on my fucking goddamn country. Cause it's on the moon. I'm like, well, I'm not even done yet. Here's all of these different types of designs I'm getting going. Look, this is a car that's just going to be delivered from space to you. I just like to troll the shit out of people. I use the airships going in and out, by the way. This one's fun. Because I have lasers and satellites and shit. Because, you know, it's pretty easy when you have an airship like that. Ah, fuck. Wait, and Lagrange points. Oh, up the yin-yang wazoos. So easy to get there. Fuck. I have a bunch of lasers, light, lens, mirrors, and shit. The moon's face got turned into my projector. Because it's like, it bounces off and it reflects off, and then it goes, and then I have to, you know, realign and stop the diffraction and diffusion and refraction problems, and kind of, you know, lens it in and focus it a little bit better, and have it display the correct image, you know, on the side that's supposed to be able to see it, right? So, which is whatever side the Earth, yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, that one turned into its own fucking shit show in a lot of ways. So it's like, impending sale! I'm addressing you from the moon. This is the moon address. They're like, you don't have no weapons of mass destruction. Thank you for sending your weapons of mass destruction to me, trying to kill us. I appreciate that you wanted me to have these nukes. They're like, this is not what we intended. Don't believe his lies. Guys, I did not intend to send him nukes. With their big, ginormous phallus that was very inadequate and ineffectual at sending large loads, distances. I can send this to you now. I was like, send it. Yeah, no, I'd love to have a delivery of more nukes. For free. Right, yes, nothing good for free. Could you please make this? It took a lot of effort to make that. I have nukes over here, just so you know. Look at all my fusion nukes. I set off one over near, what was it? There's a moon over in Mars. Over by Mars. I was like, ba-boom! It was super fun. I was like, look at that, I can do that. The entire fucking side of the moon is just engulfed in light. You can't miss it, man. It's the brightest object in their sky right now. That was fun. They freaked for a while on that one. I was like asked to come back down to Earth. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. You're gonna try and do shit to me. I know how you guys fucking work. You're all fucking conspiratorial little nut job CIA, FBI shit. Fucktards, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, paranoia! Yeah, paranoia! I was like, nah! I know how you work. You're gonna try and kill me or something. Which, by the way, I will detonate the moon if I die. On a moon address recently. That was fun while it lasted. I needed to make a magnetosphere anyways, so I need to detonate some shit underground. Make it all liquidy and whatnot. I need to make a much smoother, much more better reflector projector for the big side of that usually faces us, right? And then same thing with the dark side. Because like when light's coming on and it's reflecting, I can use that light with some destructive and constructive effects to allow for greater accuracy and a lot less light needed to be a projector. But it's kind of iffy at best. So it's like, and then it's like, this is the whitest white ever with the most it's literally perfect fucking like up to the north and south and east and west poles, you know, like for that. So and then with the curvature of their atmosphere, we're like, yes, it shall now become a focusing beam. It will be your lens. Yes. They're like, there's clouds today. I was like, these clouds will become a different type of focusing lens. The diffuser of the cloud will become actually the very opposite. A concentrator light emitter that we pulse correctly to induce both a sound, that's right, speaker, and light pass through. It's even brighter and more clear and even louder with all the light that we had to like boom, boom, boom in our upper atmosphere, and then create like an expansionary like thunder, you know what I mean, and different like bzzz kind of effects, and then that's a bunch of phasing and coherent, or not coherent, constructive interference, and then destructive interference for other sounds like active noise canceling, but it becomes a positive constructive energy to the sound that we want played to the earth. And it was like, can't stop me now! I've got the largest fucking goddamn can't even miss it screen. I was like, not even very long into it, truthfully. Like the moment I got the moon base, I was already trying to make it. I was like, time to start immediately doing satellites. Time to start immediately with lasers. Time to start doing all the bulldozing and smoothing and flattening. I mean, this Earth, this moon, you know, whatever the fuck, is gonna need to be placed everywhere. Besides, I need to terraform, clearly, in order to make it such that it is more habitable for more people. We can't always be mole people forever as the moon people. They weren't going to be able to stop me. They can barely get an Artemis project going. I was like, this is fucking so happening. A private individual from America went over and took the moon for himself, you bitch. Why are we going after this? Do you know how hard it is to get to the moon, you dick? Well, he goes there all the time. How come we can't do that? You don't understand. I'm not going to pay for any of this shit. This is bullshit. I had a fun one, truthfully, doing that. It was so fun. I was watching them just fucking debate each other and get nowhere, kick cans down the road, get nothing done. Meanwhile, me... By the way, we're accepting citizenship, applications, and nationalization processes. Okay? There's a big filter here. There's a lot of tests. We're going to know if you're a manipulative gabagoo, psychopath, narcissist, sociopath, if you're a spy, any of these things, effectively. You will never be allowed to come on to our planet. That's right, it's mine now. Ha 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 ha. Meanwhile, Artemis is over there just kind of like, shit. This guy has weapons, better spacesuits. We can't do nothing, sir. He has a bulldozer. A literal fuck this guy. I'm like doing all this floaty mumbo jumbo. Like they're like, well, the fuck are you floating? It's a whole thing with thrusting and solar cells. You wouldn't get it. Meanwhile, I'm like, yes, become my flat, perfect, reflective surface. That is not flat because it has to be more like a Lorenz mirror kind of system with there's a clear coat that I have to put it along and like multiple layers. Whole thing with like, anyways, point is, it allows for good reflectivity, yes, and great diffusal across the entire surface of Earth, which is great, because otherwise it'd be really dangerous. It'd be really pretty fucking dangerous, actually. Yeah. I did it to the entire, both the dark side and the one that we normally see, which is great, because do you know what it means? No, please tell us. The dark side is much easier for me to get projections perfectly. And then the bright side is even brighter, even less escapable. You will hear me do my moon addresses as I plap along my family and dance and rave the night away as I address my citizens and enjoy life. Meanwhile, the Artemis Project is like, guys, did you leave us anything that we might have for value? Guys? I already gave them the ice and gemstones and lots of rocks. What more do you need? I got liquid water from the moon and shit. I've got it so down deep, it's a mile down deep. Fucking soil and rock sample shit. What more do they need from you? Fuck yourself, bitch. You're dead. Anyways, big boom, 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 boom. You remember Core? You know, like they had like this submarine that's supposed to go into like fucking lava and whatnot. And then they started up with like nukes or whatever. Yeah. I was like, well, that's a bad way to go. It won't work. But you know what I could do? Something else that's similar-ish. Yeah. It's like I'm going to destabilize the core effectively. I'm going to like have a bunch of collapsing inward gravitational, you know, and then a bunch of heat and then like a large amount of thermite iron redox flow stuff. Then I'm going to use like a bunch of light to really make sure it's already very hot to begin with. As I just pump it in there, and then I use a bunch of electricity, and it's basically a lot of acoustic resonance that's going on too. Eventually I got to the point where it's like, I have a magnetosphere! Because I kind of had to drill into the core to a degree and make it have like a bunch of different structures get placed inside. So a good way to put that is I had to mine and manufacture, because I had to drill down there and do all this anyways. So like I'm going to need to do that. But iron nickel isn't very good at that. It's got a lot of pressure. So it's like if I want a good, very small though, and because this is big, the moon's big, I don't care how like much you think I've progressed. It's still a big fucking thing, man. So it's like there's a you know, core is going to have to spin fairly quickly, but also I need to have a lot of that lava and so on, right? And I definitely need to have tectonics split in the right ways. So it's like pre-drilling and using a lot of biological processes to break in the soil effectively, organic chemistry of, you know, bacteria and so on. And lots of me working together with it, concentrating lots of heat and all these other things to effectively turn the core into a much better elicitor of a large magnetic field for a magnetosphere. During the falling down process, though, it would create what is effectively a massive exchange of electrons, right? And that's the heat, but during that I get a lot of gases. Oxygens, nitrogens, well, mostly argons for what it's worth, kryptons, neons, very small amount of nitrogen, immediately with a big, very specifically set up tectonic plate style that I had to make be a thing with a bunch of automated processes, which means I had a lot of automated mining equipment and more doing this. And it's like, the Artemis Project is like, you! What the fuck am I here for? I'm not going to be able to get anything from it. And other people, we landed a thing. You're not allowed to land shit onto my planet. Are you fucking friendly and an ally? You're on my country's soil. Yo. I mean, China did its own weather balloon phenomenon, you know what I mean? Like, you think that was bad. Fucking yeeting fucking stupid ass nukes at us. Fuck you too, bitch. Anyways, cracked it, got it spun up, got a lot of extra heat, got a lot of atmosphere suddenly. But here was the trick, because remember I went all the way with that big old nuke thing, which is just really meant to be like a show of gamma ray and like a nova type of thing, but very small one, so that way we wouldn't die and be very good at reflecting and it wouldn't destroy the moon. I didn't want to make much more than a small little dent in there. Right? That kind of thing. Yeah. But it's like, if that hadn't been in your atmosphere, it would have been a much larger explosion. It would have probably killed the entire planet. So, just shut the fuck up. Leave me alone. It's like, meanwhile, $2,000, huh? Cha-ching! Playing that game the right way, you know what I mean? Big fucking nuke wing came over here. Space technology and shit. Yeah! Meanwhile, he's like, really, I'm amenable to allies. I don't really want to fuck you over. You know, I've got my own economy and GDP. It's really these stupid douchewads were sending nukes at me, and I didn't like that, and none of you did anything. So that's kind of what that was. So, moving on to, alright, so now I've got a decent magnetosphere with a atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere is roughly equivalent, and I mean roughly, to Earth's atmosphere in terms of its atmospheric pressure, right? Because I have a much greater density of noble gases. You know what I mean? Yeah. Meanwhile, here's me proving it on a live stream. I take off my fucking like suit and shit and just fucking with my big projector go full naked with all my citizens. Just breathing in the atmosphere, having a blast. It's slightly higher oxygen content for what it's worth than Earth, but not much. It's a few percent, and that's it. So, you know. But, cool stuff. Now, you do have to register for international travel and passports, and you have to land in certain places. You can't just land anywhere. So, it's my country, you know. Yeah. I was already setting up one over on Mars for what it was worth. At that point, they were not super happy I was colonizing other planets, and I was like, get over it. You're the one that's slow. It was fun, though, because it was like, well, now I need this to actually sustain itself during the process of, like, effectively crunch, but also I needed to grab a bunch of other asteroids and comets around the area, because remember I was talking about going to Mars. Well, there are some places I can go to get more material for this. It's like, now I need to get a bunch of water, so comets were really nice for that. And so I eventually got water, regular sort of styles of earth, soil. I have my own ecosystem with bugs, fungus, mold, bacteria, little insects, mammals, arachnids, and all the rest of it. Whole fucking thing. My magnetosphere is stronger than Earth's, for what it's worth, but it also dissipates more quickly. So, like, Earth travels out, mine is quite concentrated where it is, and then it will still ultimately bend. We get coronal mass ejections like any other normal planet. We have rain, and lightning, and thunder, and fires, for what it's worth. There's grass growing. Who would have thought? You know, we got plants, right? Got to have the plants, you know, carbon sink, because we dumped so much carbon dioxide into our atmosphere at first, you know, to really speed up this process. I mean, the volcanoes alone were a bit telling when they went off. Yeah, gotta have it happen. Yeah. It's a big one, though. But we got it done. We, meaning mostly me, and then my family, and then Artemis was along for the ride. And I had a blast doing that. They didn't really appreciate it as much. I don't really care what they appreciated, though, for what it's worth. So that was that, you know. Could we live on the planet? I don't want to go back. Well, there's a whole naturalization process and a citizenship test and all the rest of it. But I suppose, yeah. But lots of solar panel, lots of wind now, lots of geothermal, right? To a degree, right? It's going to cool off, so there's that. It's a whole other thing. Eventually it will. Well, I mean, it'll take a while. It's not the same size of Earth, and for what it's worth, the amount of light, because there's really just one side that gets the majority of it, which is why it turned into, oh no, what happened during the crunch? Did it suddenly change its spin and we get a 24-hour cycle? I changed the bulldozed, flattened structure instead of one side and another side. It's now just a certain, parallel angle thing now, right? For the correct helical and other structures as it travels around to get the proper reflectivity and everything else. Which, to be fair, they weren't super happy about. And I was like, I don't care. I really didn't. I was like, here's all my solar panels and all of my satellites and all of my lasers and reflectivity and more. And my airships that give you more airships to come over to my country that you can absolutely become a citizen of and be naturalized. You do need to have a passport, and you should probably talk to us a little bit beforehand and run through the test because we know exactly who you are. We know all of your online internet use. We know everything you've ever said and stated. We know if you're lying all the time. Which turned it into, so a lot of good people came over to our fucking goddamn country and planet. And everyone else had to meekly muddle on through. With a bunch of sociopathic, psychopath, narcissist, manipulative gabagoos. That one took a few years, though. I wouldn't get into it. Because, for what it's worth, when I said, oh, Scott Manley would want this and everything else, that's how far along I've already gotten. I've already terraformed the moon. I have a country. It has cunny bucks as a GDP and national currency, which, yes, that's the porn. You're going to have to deal with it. I'm a trolley dick and you're going to deal with it. Meanwhile, just for an FYI, that porn is not of those that did not want it to be used. Deal with that for what you will, especially with the consent that is there for our country and them saying they do, and the test required and all the rest that I have that states no matter what you fucking think, they're good. Good old cunny bucks for you. Ba-boom! Meanwhile, I'm a regular denoting amount, I'm not like the big boy fucking bucks and shit. Although I'm on some bills that are larger for what it's worth. I'm I think I'm $20 bill right now, and then that's I think the 5, right? I'm naked and only on the $100 bill. Really? 1,000! Boom boom. Okay. Meanwhile, 20s and 5s, huh? You only get to see for quite. I've got 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 20, all in increments with even $50. Coins too, everywhere in the digital. Great. All of it is most definitely porn. The only ones that aren't are really me, besides the $100,000 bill. But for the most part, you'll probably be using those anyways. I figured you'd shut the fuck up about it already. Alright. Now we're done on that. And that's the airship design. And that's why I also started making cars and motorcycles. And engines. And motors. Which, by the way, I don't have any incomplete engines. I have never put out on my YouTube channel any engine that would not work and is incomplete. That is exactly why I have that. Even electric motors and generators, alternators, stators, scooters, motorcycles, engines, transmissions, materials after materials after materials after material after material after material after material after generator after generator after battery after battery after battery after battery after battery, capacitor, 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 capacitor. Energy recovery, energy recovery, energy recovery. It just goes on and on, you know? Even ways of running my government. If you want to know how I run my moon government, it's on my YouTube channel. Which means, suck it up, I definitely have all the pieces together to do this. Trillions of dollars of GDP. America. Why? Why are you so slow and bad? China, why are you decrepit old people? I have like literal biological immortality, by the way. On my YouTube too. And it would work. Although I've changed some of the designs in my audio blog so that way it's a little less, you know, what it is. It works a little better, basically. You know, it still works. It still uses that initial, but like it's still a part of that. Just because I want that to be something I'm doing, and my citizens get once they pass enough tests to get it. I will be forever. I even have quantum immortality stuff. With my cellular biology, that's synthetic and regular organic, working together to make that happen. I don't even need spacesuits at this point, though, for what it's worth. My body is effectively like one. That's one of the reasons why I was like, no, I'm pretty darn fucking genuinely impossible to kill. I mean, even the biological I had was effectively I'll store information throughout my body, and if you were to regrow me back, I'd have it all the way back until the point where it was practically obliterated. I have no memory issues on that. And at all. But then I was like, but I'll do you one better. The whole universe would go, bah. And I would still be alive. I guess I'll just have to eventually wank one out or two over enough time. And I'd make a big ol' and universe. Why are you telling us this in the airship? Because if you got to this point, boy howdy, are you in for a treat. You're probably going to want to go through all of my YouTube channels. The one, really. The videos is what I meant, but interrupters here. And see for yourself that I'm not lying. And I'm telling Yeah, all of that, because it really is there. And you could have had this if you'd worked with me. I guess you'll just have to die. Knowing that you would never get this without me. Because the only way that you're going to get it is because people heard it and tried to steal it to varying degrees. Or if we talk about our past in Chandler House, then you know damn well I came up with it back then, didn't record it, but it wouldn't matter because the rules still apply. They aren't allowed to take it. And yeah, they can't even actually design, manufacture, or make any version of these things. Or any adjacent version of these things. Without ultimately getting everyone killed. Before it's made. So it's mine and mine alone. This guy, Xenon. That's right. My full name is John Tyler Lemke, but that's multiple times on my YouTube channel anyways. Even where I live and more. I really don't give a fuck, bitch. Have fun with the Lemke cycle engines that you can't build and an airship you can't build and all the rest of it that you can't build. Like and subscribe. Have a good one. Just gonna have to stop the recording here pretty soon and boop.